Okay. That was an awesome panel, and I don't have too much to add. I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but I do want to share some thoughts with you that I thought would be helpful to you as you start your projects. And actually, do I need the mic, or can you hear me without the mic?
With the mic.
With the mic, okay. So, one of the things that I want you kids to know, which you probably already do know, because having been the mom of someone who went through the robotics program with Mr. Smith, and with Mr. Turi and Mr. Hoban at Montclair High School when they were there, I know that you do your research. So I know that you know that the aging population is the largest growing segment of our population, right? And that the baby boomers, okay, so people who were born post-war, are 78 million strong. That's 78 million people that you, if you pursue this as a career and if you become interested in working on projects for seniors, can help. So what I think would be helpful to you as an expert in aging is to think about what aging is, okay, and what the aging process may make difficult. I think what you saw from our panel is that even though they are older than you, they still have things that they love to do, that growing older has even freed them up to do things that they wanted to do that they couldn't do when they were younger, when they had to take care of children in the house or were working at a different kind of job. So one of the things that is a challenge is to help people, even though they're older, stay vital and stay engaged. Because what we know makes a difference in the aging process is our ability to stay vital and to stay engaged. And one way that it can help you, it can be helpful to think about this, is across 3 dimensions of health and well-being. One is physical health, one is intellectual health, which is my area of expertise, and one is social and emotional health. So I can tell you from a brain health and from a successful aging perspective, if we stay engaged and vital across those dimensions of well-being, we age better. People who participate and are physically active, for example, and who practice intellectual engagement, which means that they do things like what you heard the panel doing. They stay active in their communities, they teach, they write, they are interested and engaged. And people who are social, they have social connections, they're connected to their grandchildren, so your grandparents might fall into that category, or to their community or their church or synagogue, they age better. Okay? But what are the challenges there? So some of the challenges are as follows. From the physical side, one of the things that can happen is that there are sensory changes. So as we grow older, pretty much across the board, okay, even if we're very healthy, we have changes in our vision. So here, I hate wearing these, okay, but I have reading glasses because my vision has started to change. And then that progresses for people as they grow older. So think about things that people have to read to function well every day. Things such as medication instructions. How many of you kids have ever tried to read, like on a bottle, a prescription bottle, or a bottle of like aspirin, or like Motrin or Tylenol, what it says? Okay, is the writing, it's pretty small, isn't it? So if you're older, it can be harder to read things that are written in very tiny print. Mobility issues become more apparent as we grow older. It can be an impediment to successful engagement and independence. So things like opening jars, right? And kind of managing things which can affect, for example, just with managing jars alone, cooking, right? One of the things you need to do to stay independent is cook, right? You need to be able to feed yourself. So if cooking becomes more difficult because of opening jars or managing utensils, well, that's something that can be addressed through technology and can help seniors stay more independent. Exercise is key. It was funny to listen to the panel and talk about that they don't exercise but they walk. And I can tell you from an intellectual kind of side of health that one of the studies that has kind of been a hallmark in my field, demonstrating that staying physically engaged lowers your risk for for memory impairment, so lowers your risk for Alzheimer's disease, looks at people who just walk. So walking is great. Kind of walking is all you need to do. But as people grow older, there are other kinds of physical things that happen to them that make it harder to engage in exercise. We lose muscle mass. We can have difficulty with mobility, right? With balance. So that one of the challenges becomes staying physically active. How do you keep exercising? So those are some things from the physical side. From the intellectual side, and I got some questions from some of you kids about this during our break, one of the things is staying active, right? Keeping our minds active. And I know a lot of you are interested in the question of memory. So as I answered to one young woman, Stephanie, who was right there, when you think about intellectual performance as we grow older, I want you to think about two things, okay? Because there really is two what we call endpoints. One is staying intellectually capable for the activities that we want to do every day. So when we asked the panel about something that was challenging for them, they mentioned names, several of them. I want them to be comforted by this fact. Forgetting names is the #1 memory complaint of adult Americans over the age of 50. So forgetting names, if that's something you're concerned about, you are not alone. And certainly we need to be able to remember to function independently and stay vital. We need to remember directions. We need to remember where we put things, what our appointments are. We need to be able to manage our medicines. Okay? And those are all great ways that technology can be helpful for seniors staying independent. But the other endpoint is reducing risk for dementia. Alzheimer's disease is a growing epidemic in this country. And in fact, today is Alzheimer's World Action Day. Okay? So I'm glad to have an opportunity to talk about this to you kids. What we know about Alzheimer's disease is that as we grow older, we're more at risk. And we don't have any treatments to stop the disease or to fully treat the disease. And that's something that is an area of a lot of research. But certainly we can help people who have memory loss live independently and live a better quality of life for longer in the community through technological assistance. And we can also look at the literature on what we can do to help people not develop a memory problem. What helps people stay healthier for longer and avoid memory loss. And again, that is getting engaged. That is doing these kinds of things that you heard the panel telling you that they do. And then the final area of well-being to touch on is the social and emotional area of well-being. When we get older, we can be more isolated. We can lose family members. We can live far away from our family. So many of you might even have family in other states or in other countries. And while it's something while we're young and healthy that we don't think about, when people get older and become more needy or need help from someone in the community, they can feel quite isolated. So that's an issue. The other issue, just to point out, is that as we grow older, we're more vulnerable to emotional distress, such as depression and anxiety. Okay? So these are our areas that I wanted to kind of bring to your attention that are issues in the aging process. So if the goal of your projects, right, and of technology in general, is to help those people with those challenges face them in a way that they can stay independent and stay vital, there's lots of opportunities there. There are opportunities in terms of helping people with sensory perceptual challenges. One thing I asked the panel, is interesting, none of them had this, a lot of people have changes in their sense of smell as they grow older. So can any of you tell me what might be a situation that would be dangerous for someone if they couldn't smell?
Toxic gas.
A toxic gas. So natural gas, right? So probably many of you know that the smell, have you ever smelled natural gas? Okay? There's not actually a smell to natural gas. They add something to it so we can smell it because it's so dangerous if we don't. Anybody else? Fires. smoke, right? Those would probably be the two at the top of the list. Another one would be, in terms of just staying vital independent, what about being able to smell your food, right? To see if the food is still good. Yeah?
Ammonia and water kind of look the same, but when you smell it,
Right. So being able to distinguish between different things. These are all great answers. The other thing is to help with vision, right? Things that might help with vision. Things that help manage medications. That was one of the questions that was asked. As we grow older, we are prescribed a lot more medications in this country, and then people also tend to take things like supplements. So how do you know what you're taking? How do you keep track effectively of when you take it? There is a machine that was developed that's an automatic dispenser that is filled monthly, and that dispenses pills out of the machine only when they're supposed to be taken, okay? So that's an example of technology used specifically for that purpose. In terms of intellectual performance, that's an area where there's so much going on, it's amazing. So as someone who's been working in this field since 1990, I can tell you that the explosion of technology-based interventions around training people in cognitive skills, so training people in strategies that they can use to stay at the top of their game every day, to remember names better, to remember where they keep things, to remember things they learned in conversation. That's booming. There's lots of applications out there. I'm happy to, when I'm done, because I don't want to keep you for too much longer, I can tell you kids some of those things if you want to look at them. Certainly the technologies are out there. So you use an iPad, for example. My grandmother's turning 100 in March. She also really likes the iPad. It's a great application. But sometimes you have to be careful. So I know people who come up with cell phone applications for seniors, only to find out that there's no market for it, because a lot of seniors don't carry smartphones, right? So there's lots of opportunities to use the technology. Let me give you some examples that might surprise you, just to kind of give you some ideas. How many of you play on the Wii? Oh, it's really fun, right?
yes.
You used to play, right? Yeah, okay, it's a little old, right? It's not an Xbox. Well, one of the things that you may not know is that a number of seniors also use the Wii. And that when the Wii came out, one of the markets that Nintendo didn't realize would be fabulous for the Wii were seniors. Because if you think about how many of you have done Wii bowling? Okay? So imagine that you're older and you don't have the mobility to go to the bowling alley and to pick up the ball, right? And to run down the alley and to bowl. But you can pick up the Wii remote and you can sit in a chair and bowl, right? And unfortunately, there's no way for me to show you this video, but if you go to YouTube and you look at this following community, so some of you might, your parents maybe can write this down if you're interested. It's Erickson Community, ERICKSON Communities, and just do Erickson Communities Wii Bowling on YouTube. You will see a series of communities. Erickson, I think, has 10 to 15, I'm not sure how many they have now, continuum of care senior living communities. Cedar Crest Village, if anyone here is familiar with Cedar Crest, okay, was an Erickson community. I think they've been sold. They had a league. So they not only had a bowling team there where they were, they had these folks have teams. They got jackets, they had bowling shirts, they had names, and they did this really cool video showing these seniors competing against each other. Virtually, right? Because they didn't have to, they had communities in South Carolina and some in New Jersey. But they had the teams compete against each other using the Wii. And it gave them an opportunity for physical exercise, for socialization, for lots of things that support healthy aging. Another technology is a phone that I bet none of you kids even heard of called the Jitterbug phone. Has anyone heard of that phone? Okay, what is it that's special about the Jitterbug, guys? Do you remember? What? Right, it's a very simple phone and has really big numbers. So when they originally developed that phone, they developed it for kids. They thought that elementary school kids would be an absolute great market for this phone, except they forgot to consult with elementary school parents, right? Who were not going to lay out But then there's a secondary market. They realized this was a great technology for seniors who maybe had trouble seeing the numbers or manipulating the smaller keys and wanted a phone for safety reasons, but maybe they had a slight memory impairment, right? So they couldn't function with something too complicated. So that product, the Jitterbug phone, is actually now much more popular in the senior market and is featured on the Alzheimer's Association website as, you know, a device that people can use. And then finally, now this may not seem unusual to any of you kids, okay? And what's unusual is not the fact that this is a grater, but the handle of this grater, okay? This is a company called OXO. So many of us have these devices in our kitchen just because they're kind of cool, and it's what's on the market. But this was originally developed for seniors. So this handle is much larger than your typical grater handle would have been when I was your age, and it's soft. And it was developed as a way for seniors who had dexterity problems, right, to be able to grip onto something that was larger and a little softer to make its use in the kitchen safer. And I believe they first started with a peeler or with knives. And it's a very simple solution, isn't it? But a very elegant one to a problem that doesn't seem from the outside to be that significant, to help seniors stay cooking in the kitchen. But when you think about someone's ability to cook or to travel, you're talking about maintaining independence and staying vital and connected, right? And so these things matter. So what I would say to you in closing is that I hope I've given you a good overview of kind of different things to consider in the aging process, both what the goal is of successful aging and what some of the challenges are. And I would just say to you that the solution doesn't have to be complicated. There's a very famous geriatrician. A geriatrician is a doctor, like your pediatrician or an internist. They specialize in older adults. And he once said that probably one of the most important things you can do for an older person is help them keep their toenails properly clipped. Now that sounds really silly, right? But he was talking about it being the best medicine. And the reason is because if someone gets an ingrown toenail, it affects their walking. Maybe they're not going to be as mobile anymore. They're not going to exercise. If they can't get out, right, if they get an infection, it can affect their physical health. They won't be able to go out into the community, and it can affect their balance, right? So there's a lot of different ways in which something very small can have a big impact. So in that way, I would say to you, it doesn't have to be big, right? It can be a very small thing, but a very small thing can make an enormous difference. So it's really been my privilege to be able to give back to a program that gave my family and my son so very much. And I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm also happy if you want my email for any questions I can help you with as you work as a source. I'm happy to share that with you too, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
This has been a spectacular evening for us with